we go. Hi, Fong. How are you?
Hey, I'm good.
I'm gonna filter my face here because it's Instagram. We can put filters on. It's great. All
Sorry about
right,
that.
guys. Sorry for that. I knew it was going to take a minute. I had some issues this morning, so we wanted to jump on a little bit earlier. Um, all right. I met Fong in Edmonton, and we both got to speak with our coach as well as a lot of really big industry leaders. We got to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger, spoke on the same stage as him. And it was a really fun experience. And I wanted to bring him on for you guys because I have a lot of people. I mean, the whole idea with doing these lives for you is to give you different perspectives from different industries. As much as I'm a multifaceted person, I invest, I coach, I do a lot of things. It's important to get multiple streams going with different perspectives. So that's why I bring different people in, get the different perspectives from all around the world. Fong is Canadian, though. He is in Edmonton, which is great. So we have another fellow Canadian. And I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, but today we're going to talk about real estate, just for everyone tuning in that wants to know kind of what Fong does and where we kind of see the markets going, what you guys can get ready for if you are looking to invest, and kind of give you some tips. We both discussed this. We're going to try to keep the advanced stuff down and go from the basics. So for anyone who's just starting to get into real estate investing or looking at real estate in general, that's what our goal is today. So if you have any questions, just pop them in there. I will monitor that for us. Good morning. There's people jumping on. So yeah, introduce yourself, Fong, and kind of explain your history, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So my name is Fong Chua, and I absolutely love doing things like this because I love adding value and impacting as many people as I can. So about 10 years ago, I am an engineer by trade. Being in Edmonton, Alberta, we are very susceptible to the oils and that industry. So I'm an engineer by trade. And 10 years ago, when the economy went down to the pits, that's when I started doing real estate investing. That's when I started going to courses, learning about how to invest, learning more about business. From there on, I got into a few more properties, built up to a portfolio of about 30, 35 doors. And then I started doing some business training, learning more about the branding, marketing aspects of how businesses run. Then I got into doing some infinite banking where I was able to lend out my money for other people and make money on that side. You were talking about some passive income. Well, now I have money lending, and then now I also have some rental income coming in. So there I went on to doing some book writing. I'm an author of 5 books. I have 2 books that are bestsellers. I coach people how to write books now too. And some of my clients, most of them actually have gotten bestseller status. And then I went on to doing some speaking, and then now I also coach. So that's a very, very quick little synopsis of what I've done over the last kind of 10 years here.
Yeah, I love it. And it's just a perfect example of, once you start doing one thing outside of your normal box, a lot of other opportunities come. Like you said, he's an author, speaker, and then once you got really good at that, there's an opportunity to coach other people on that. So teaching people what you've learned is great. One thing I love with you is the engineering background. So you came from an engineering background. That is a nice corporate job. A lot of people don't want to leave that type of job. So that was kind of my first topic to talk about with you is there's going to be people that are going to lose their job in corporate, whether it doesn't matter what it is. You went to school for it, that was your job, and you're going to be trying to fight to find another one. And this is a perfect opportunity to get into real estate. And it's kind of funny that, you did get in when the last crash happened. So these are the times when everyone's kind of running away and scared. These are the times you want to start buying and investing. So what are some of the basic tips when you started? I mean, we're both going to agree, get coaches no matter what. Yeah. But what would be some first kind of grounds, what someone would do to start getting into real estate or investing in Canada? Because I guess we're talking about Canada. But
I think the very first step is to really make that decision of doing real estate, and then not psyching yourself out. Because lots of people start thinking, I want to get into real estate, and then what if this happens? What if that happens? I don't know how to do that. They start to overthink things instead of taking one step at a time. I think the best thing that people can do is find a realtor who actually has some investment background, who's able to coach you along into what properties to look for, what type of areas to work for, and then meet a few different realtors and see which one you want to work with. When we started, we actually went, when we're able to go to coffee shops, we've actually scheduled 5, 6 different realtors to come in 1 hour at a time, and just basically sat there and interviewed each realtor, basically going, what kind of specialization are you in? Have you been doing work with other investors? Do you invest yourself? And then after a while, we picked 2 or 3 of them that we liked, and then we just started putting out offers or going out and look at properties so that we could get a feel for which one we want to work with, who do we want to build relationships with, and then it kind of builds from there.
I think that's a really good tip, because I think when you first get into it, let's say you own a home and you just own your personal home and you have kind of no idea about real estate. A lot of people look at real estate agents as, you know, you need them. It's actually the other way around. So what are you going to do for me? And that is a big step some people miss out on, and that can cause losing out money down the line. So I do the same thing. I connect with a lot of realtors, you know, see which ones I want to work with. And also different markets, because you could be going into, I mean, you're great. You're set up in a great area as well, but there's different markets. You don't necessarily have to use, you know, the person you bought your home with, even though they have a nice investment, you know, offer. You don't want to necessarily be using them if someone else knows the market, you know, a couple cities over. So making sure you're doing your due diligence with the real estate agents is really big. I agree with that.
So it's not only just the realtors. You might want to do the same thing with your mortgage brokers, with your property managers, whoever you want to work with. Interview 2 or 3 of them and see which one works well. Or even ask your realtor that you've already picked, who do they use? Because they have relationships built with other people, and it's good to have that teamwork going on already, so that you can work with them more smoothly.
Yeah, I agree. And so one thing I hear a lot from kind of first-time real estate investors is there's a fear around it, right? And I always say it's one of the safest investments you can do, but you can lose money in it if you aren't getting the proper coaching or doing your due diligence and research. So why do you think that is? Like we know it's one of literally the safest investments you can do. Property will always be property. Even if it goes down, it will eventually go back up. And it's all about how you buy. Why do you think it's such a scary fear behind it for first timers?
It's one of those things that people they're not in the environment where people talk about it a lot. Their mindset is basically, okay, when we get out of school, we get our first jobs, the first thing we're going to do is buy our very first home, and that's going to be our home for the rest of our lives. And it's hard to kind of diverge from that mindset and go, maybe I need a second, third, fourth, fifth property, until you start realizing, hey, it's one of the best things to do when it comes to investing and parking your money into a warehouse that will always grow if you buy it correctly. So once you start thinking that way, then that fear of it not working starts kind of diminishing. You start realizing that other people are making it work as well. So my kind of advice for that is, other people are making it work, so why can't you make it work? So you should be able to talk and ask questions to those people who are doing it already and see how they're making it work. Yeah,
absolutely. And one thing I'm going to kind of touch on is some people, it comes down to the language and the acronyms and things like that, and you don't know. Just ask people that are already doing it. There's a lot of people that you'll know, even within your family, friends groups, networks, that are at least investing in a second property, a third property, maybe multiple. Depends what your network is. If not, find those people and try to learn from them, because they're always willing to give you that knowledge in investing in multiple properties and how it works. I think it's just really overwhelming for a lot of people, but I think it is something that needs to be looked at for everyone, because you're going back to these corporate jobs that you might necessarily not have. Number one is a concern. Number two, your salary might get cut in half. You might have some money saved or some sort of investment where you could potentially, even if it's starting off with one property, it's something that I think everyone should be doing. And how do you feel about, the kind of time gap? So I mean, I see this is the other thing. So people will ask, when do I buy? You know, how do we know with COVID? And there's a lot of more fear because it's the middle of a pandemic, which we understand. So I know like we have both probably seen deals come across, but that's because we have skin in the game.
Yeah.
So for a first timer, like I've been telling people anywhere from 30 to 180 days is where it's just going to keep getting better. And there's that fear of, should I wait a little longer? And I've been saying, if you get a deal, you get a deal no matter what. And regardless, that property will go back up and you will, you know, get your income. So what's your input on that? Do you think it's a 30 to 180 day type thing? Maybe specifically Canadian market, because I know some of the US is already tanking.
Yeah, I think as of right now, it's pretty good at, you could probably negotiate more because there's less and less people willing to buy. So you
Yeah.
could probably do more negotiations. It always doesn't hurt to go out there and put in an offer and see what happens. Whether it gets accepted or it doesn't get accepted, well, you always have a chance to either back out of it because you have your clauses in place. And that's one of the things that people are afraid of. They think that once they put in an offer, that's it. Well, that's not true because you have time to do your due diligence. You're able to actually right now, for instance, you could do a back check to see before this whole COVID stuff happened, what was the rental market? What was the price of the houses at that time? And then you could reassess right now, how much can you buy it for? Put in an offer that's maybe 20, 30, 40% below that market value and see what happens. And then maybe you'll get that good price and maybe you get a great deal. You know you're able to get that rental market when it comes back up and you're going to be able to cash flow. So as long as you do the right numbers and you do the due diligence and your research, then there's no risk really if you know what your numbers are going to be. And having that, the engineering like me has that factor of safety, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a factor of safety of $500 a month or $1,000 a month, whatever you want to put into it, as long as it gives you that safety net, that gives you that comfort, then put in the offer and see what happens.
Yeah. I think that's really important too. First time investors, if you are someone that's first time, you kind of get hung up on the offer because the only experience you have is putting an offer in on your home, right? And when you're purchasing your home, you're in love with the property. So as much as you're still trying to get a deal, if you love that property, you love that property, right? When this is a business and you're trying to grow passive income or secondary properties, you have to take that emotion out, one, and you have to have your numbers in place. Like you can make offers all day long, but the important thing is to not budge on your number. So once you have your numbers done, if it's 5 or 10 grand, that's 5 or 10 grand. You walk away. I mean, it's happened many times where you'll get the call back anyways, a couple weeks later, especially in times like these, because, you know, they remembered you and remembered your offer and, you know, they got greedy for a second. So taking that emotion out.
In fact, right now is probably a good time to put out offers because, so what I usually tell people is, I don't go out to look at properties anymore. I put out the offers and then I wait until it gets accepted before I actually go look at the property. Then I can go assess, oh, there's this much damage, this much work. Then I renegotiate again. But at least I have that contract already written and that contract already accepted. And right now, because people are afraid of going out and visiting properties, you can actually say, I'm going to put out offers now and not look at the property until later. So it's a great time to actually do that and have that reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at one, and the only way to get into the property was to make an offer. They weren't even doing walkthroughs. I was like, okay.
Well, yeah, because it saves you so much more time. You don't have to go and look at a whole bunch of properties, and then may or may not get that property accepted. So it's more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then what's your advice for people that are, because you transitioned very well. You obviously did it in the middle of a crash. So transitioning from corporate to being your own entrepreneur essentially and being your own investor and making your own little economy. What were the obstacles you had? What are some obstacles you coach people on, and where can people get some value from that?
Well, one thing is just to find something that works within what you enjoy. That makes it a little easier. You don't have to absolutely have complete passion in it, but you still need to understand the passion of business. You have to understand the way how businesses work, because you can apply that to anything else if you really wanted to, whether it's real estate and speaking and coaching or any other. The fundamentals are the same.
Sorry, dogs.
So my recommendation is find other people that are doing things that you want to do. Ask them
Right.
questions. Now, for the people who are successful and who are doing very well in what you want to do, they'll actually want to share with you what they do, how they got there.
Yeah.
It's the people who don't want to share. Well, then they're probably not the right person to ask anyways, because usually people like sharing their successes, they like sharing their failures, they like sharing their learning curves with other people who wants to learn. So if you are genuinely wanting to learn about something new and want to go out there and do something with business or real estate, find the people that you know around you that are already doing it. And then from there on, ask for an introduction to somebody else that's able to give you more input. And then spread your network over there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it literally comes down to building those relationships. And once you have, you know, a couple feet and a couple doors, so many other opportunities come. Like you might start in real estate and then start investing in something completely different, but just building those connections along the way. Those are some of the best advices we could both give you, and learn from other people. People, like, we love giving value to other people and coaching other people and helping other people because we get to see the success story, right? So there are so many people out there, whether it's in your town, whether it's, you know, especially right now, pretty much anyone you could think of that you wanted to get on the phone with, you probably could get them on the phone and spare 5 or 10 minutes of their time just to get some value out of it. So go with intention, have what you want written down and your questions ready. And just be honest. Like no question is a silly question because we all started from our first property. We all started from ground zero or our first business or anything like that. So, and I just think that the property is the safest kind of investment right now to be getting into. If you are more of a savvy investor and maybe I'll put a little bit of one of our higher questions in here, and you're starting to look at different types of investments, just be doing your due diligence, be doing your homework, look for those red flags, and really think about where this market's going. Which one thing I'm sure you could talk on, which I'd love to get your opinion on because I ask everyone this in real estate, is the Airbnb model. And a lot of people have, you know, been wanting to get Airbnbs and have that model. So what's your opinion on it and where do you think it's going to go?
I personally don't have any Airbnbs. I was looking into doing some of those things. It's just one of those things of having somebody dedicated to run that business for you kind of thing. And so that you don't have to be in it yourself. If you could have somebody who has good due diligence, who's able to be a good host and be very organized, have them set that stuff up so that you don't have to be completely immersed in that area. I think it's a great model for people to start on if they really wanted to. Personally, I find that if you're able to start doing rentals in on a long-term basis, like a yearly basis, start with that so that you don't have to do so many turnover. Then from there on, you might want to convert that rental into an Airbnb.
Yeah.
One step at a time is one of the best things I can recommend. And I think starting off with one rental would be great. And then unless you have a basement that you want to rent out, but then you're going to have to live with somebody else. So personally, I don't like people living in my home when I'm there. So
me neither. Yeah.
For me, so.
And I honestly, it's going to take a huge hit, obviously, right now with COVID. And I don't think it's a safe bet right now. Like you see a lot of, you know, I'm sure within our network, we know a lot of big Airbnb people and they're having to pivot to longer rentals quickly, right? So yeah, it's something to consider. And my last kind of tidbit of advice is to not over leverage yourself. So is a strategy that goes around, and when you're getting information from people, it's like a BRR strategy. And make sure that when you're doing something like that, you're not over leveraging yourself. Because in times like these, when the economy shuts down and you know you do have a job or your income stops coming in and you don't have capital sitting there, you're going to lose everything you just built up. So as fun as it is, and once you do your first couple, you're going to start, you know, getting in the mood and wanting more and more and more, because that's how it happens. It's like Monopoly. Make sure that you have some sort of stream to protect yourself in those times, because right now I know a lot of investors that are, you know, strapped and you know, there's government funding, there's things we can do. But you got to make sure you're ready for best and worst case scenario. That's how you protect your investment. Real estate is pretty much bulletproof. if you have your numbers right. But in something like this that you can't see coming, you still want to make sure you're protected. And so don't go buying planes and cars when you make some money. That's my point.
Oh yeah, that's good.
So yeah, I also wanted to talk about your coaching, because I do have a lot of coaches that watch this, and coaches getting into speaking from coaching is always a great avenue to sell your coaching. So talk about that. Talk about how the speaking and coaching kind of happened.
Well, it's one of those things that my coach challenged me to do. The very first one was after I got a bunch of properties, I said, what's next? And he go, well, it's time for you to write some books to build some credibility. So that's what I did. And then after I wrote a few books, they go, well, next thing you should do is probably start speaking about it. And then from speaking led to some coaching. And for everything that's new, and for people who are starting out new as a speaker or starting out new as a coach or in real estate, you just have to make that first step and kind of look at it and break it down to a point where you can actually go, that's possible. So when I was challenged to do my very first talk, I was invited to this event, and they said that, would you like to speak? I go, sure. How long do you want to speak for? In my mind, I was thinking somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes. And then the person who was hosting it said, well, no, you get 2 hours. I'm like, 2 hours? I haven't spoken in front of a live audience for 2 hours. Yeah. And then the person said, well, aren't you in Toastmasters? Don't you do this kind of stuff? I'm like, well, yeah, I do. But they just sit there for a 5 to 7 minute speech. So then in the end, they basically said, well, what's the difference between a 5-minute speech than taking 10 or 20 of those speeches, putting it together and do a top 2-hour presentation? And basically that's what I did. Luckily, I did a whole bunch of speeches on real estate, a lot of speeches on investments and businesses. So I put all those together and presented a 2-hour presentation. So from there on, you just kind of tweak it up a bit so that it fits the right audience and gets the right engagement and all that kind of stuff. And you just practice. One of the best things I could recommend for practicing is being in your basement or being in your room, stand up and just walk around and talk as if the audience is there. Look at the posters on your wall, look at the photos on your wall as if they're the audience members, and speak to them. And that's a great way to practice your speaking.
I think when you have your talks, there's a lot of coaches do get nervous. I mean, everyone gets nervous with public speaking. It's probably the #1 fear in everyone. It was my biggest fear, and I just had to keep doing it. But one thing I always say is the crowd actually completely doesn't make a difference. It's one thing it's totally in your head. If you just keep practicing, you're going to have it down. And at the end of the day, it's a fear. So you just have to keep failing and kind of sucking and tweaking and working on it until you master it. But I love that you coach on that, because a lot of people struggle with speaking and they want to go out there and they want to, generate more authority, and they need help with it. So it's a great service to have. And it plays 2 and 2.
Yeah, most of the time the people who are in the audience look at you and go, wow, I wish I could do that. At the same time, you're probably standing going, man, I'm scared. So
it's so true.
One of those things.
It's that perception. I mean, I only just kind of got into speaking. I know you've been doing it for a longer time, but for when we were in Edmonton, like I was in that crowd 6 months before, and I was staring at Polly and Christine saying, oh my God, I wish I could do that. And 6 months later, I was up there. So, once you kind of flick that switch and you realize, it's more, they're not judging you. They're not looking at you. They're not trying to pick up, the one word you said wrong. They're actually admiring you. So,
focus on the people focus on the people who are engaged. Right? Who cares about the person in the back who's all grumpy? Just look at the person who's smiling at you, right? And that helps a lot.
Yeah, you don't have to please everyone, that's for sure. All right, well, I always end this question off to ask everyone. It's a random question. It might make you think, and whether you actually have a tombstone or not, it's basically what would you want your legacy to be? But I always say, what would you want on your tombstone when the day comes?
Well, when the day comes, I hope that it says something that I've been able to impact and add value to as many people as I can, and being able to unlock a lot of people's peak potentials.
Love it. I love it. That's amazing. Well, thanks for coming on, Fong. His handles are in my stories, and if you want to reach out to him directly, let me know. I know I have a lot of coaches. If there's some people that are watching this in the replay and you can't see his handle for whatever reason, just DM me. And I will send over his information as well. If you want to get in real estate and you need some coaching, or you're in the Edmonton area or anything like that, reach out to him directly. I can always send over his information. And there was one question on here. How do you put filters on a live stream? There is a little button in the bottom right corner. And it is my life, because in the middle of COVID, females can't get their eyelashes done. We can't get our hair dyed. So filters are life. That's why we love it. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Fong. It was so amazing to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And I will send over anyone that is asking for your information. Just reach out to me, guys. And Fong will definitely help you with anything you need.
Great. Thank you very much for having me again. It's been a pleasure, and it's great talking to you again. So it's until next time.
Yes, exactly. All right. Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. I hope